Warning, this following video podcast contains strong language and opinions that all viewers will find offensive and should not be viewed by anyone.
Obviously, the attacks last week, the terrorist attacks on the offices of Charlie Hebdo, I don't need to go through the details of that, you know. And this podcast isn't really about that, because when a terrorist attack happens, what's important to me, what the important thing is, what we need to analyse and what we need to look at is, how are we going to respond to this? What's our response? How do we deal with the terrorist attack? How do we because here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, and you will hear this from people always saying, oh, we need to take a tougher stance on terrorism. It's like, how do we take a tougher... no one's in favour of it, I mean, apart from terrorists, obviously, but, this thing about tougher stuff, what do they actually mean? What more can we do? I mean, what more can you do in your everyday life? If you're listening to this, I'm going to assume, like most people, when I meet most people, I don't assume they're a terrorist. The same way I assume they're not a paedophile, a murderer, they're not a rapist. I make that assumption on the basis that most people are not. So, apart from going through your everyday life and not committing a fucking terrorist attack, what else can we do? The problem with a lot of this is there are good reactions and there are bad reactions, and we can talk about both of them. There was a good reaction. One of the good reactions, obviously, was the march that took place this past Sunday. Over I think it was 3.5 million people. I mean, that's incredible. That's more people than who protested against the Iraq War. It's an incredible, incredible amount of people, and they came out. And if you saw the footage, like I did, I was watching the news all throughout that day. There were just you saw all different types of people from all different colours, all different nationalities, all different backgrounds, all different religions, including the bad one. And they were there, and generally the best reactions are the ones that for me say one simple thing: we are not scared. Because I asked the question, what can you do? What's the one thing you can do? What can you do to stop terrorism? As I've always said, I've said this, if you've been watching me for years, you'll know, there's one thing that I've always said. It's like, if you want to stop terrorism, you have to not do what the terrorists want you to do. And the terrorists, by their very definition, want you to do one thing: be terrified. If you show them that you're not terrified, that you're not scared of them, and that you're not going to be intimidated, that is as best as you can do. The second you start, but and I don't mean coming out and saying, I am scared. I mean, the second that you start showing behaviour that shows that you're terrified, that is when they start winning. That's when you start winning. We always talk about these people about they're letting the terrorists win. The people who say that, I guarantee you, 99.9 times out of 100, right, with a 0.1 margin of error, those people are the ones whose behaviour will dictate them as being someone who's scared. It's unfortunate that, there's a lot of political. There was anyone who was on the march, the civilians on the march, which is most of the 3.5 million, the civilians on the march, they were the ones who were making the right message, the ones who were going out and they said, hey, we are not going to be afraid. And they walked out there with all their banners, with their flags, representing all different nationalities from all over the world. But then you get a lot of people, unfortunately, who jump on the bandwagon. These people are unfortunately these are politicians, and I'm going to run through a list for you now. This was a list provided on Twitter by a wonderful young man who's by the name of Daniel Wickham. He did a wonderful analysis of all the people who were on, all of the political world leaders who were on the march. And I'm going to go through that list for you now. There was King Abdullah of Jordan, who last year sentenced a Palestinian journalist to 15 years in prison with hard labour. There was the Prime Minister of Davutoglu of Turkey, who imprisoned more journalists than any other country in the world. You had the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, who force-killed 7 journalists in Gaza last year, second highest after Syria. There was the Foreign Minister Shukri of Egypt, who, as well as AJ staff, has detained journalist Shorkan for around 500 days. Foreign Minister Lavrov of Russia, who last year jailed a journalist for insulting a government servant. Foreign Minister Lamar of Algeria, who has detained journalist these names are really hard to pronounce. Abdesami Abdahali for 15 months without charge. Foreign Minister of the United Arab Emirates, who in 2013 held a journalist incommunicado for a month on suspicion of MB links. Prime Minister Jomar of Tunisia, who recently jailed blogger Yassine Ayan for 3 years for defaming the army. The PMs of Georgia and Bulgaria, both of whom have a record of attacking and beating journalists. The Attorney General of the US, where police in Ferguson have recently detained and assaulted Washington Post reporters. The Prime Minister Samaras of Greece, where riot police beat and injured 2 journalists at a protest in June last year. Secretary General of NATO, who are yet to be held to account for deliberately bombing and killing 16 Serbian journalists in 1999. President Keita of Mali, where journalists are expelled for covering human rights abuses. The Foreign Minister of Bahrain, second biggest jailer of journalists in the world per capita. They also torture them. Sheikh Mohammed bin Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, Jesus Christ, I bet that's worth a lot of Scrabble, who jailed of Qatar, which jailed a man for 15 years for writing the Jasmine poem. Palestinian President Mohammed Abbas, who had several journalists jailed for insulting him in 2013. Prime Minister Sira of Slovenia, who sentenced a blogger to 6 months in prison for defamation in 2013. Prime Minister Enda Kenny of Ireland, where blasphemy is still considered a criminal offence. Prime Minister Kopacz of Poland, which raided a magazine to seize recordings embarrassing for the ruling party. PM David Cameron of Great Britain, where authorities destroyed documents obtained by The Guardian and threatened prosecution. And Saudi Ambassador of France, the Saudis publicly flogged Raif Badawi for insulting Islam on Friday. That was the Friday just gone. These were the people who turned up, the world leaders, to show we're standing up for free speech. Now, all of these are recent incidents, and there'll be links below so you can get all the important stuff below. But there's no reason. Now, you would think any incident where this whole march is supposed to be about freedom of speech, but it's not, is it? It's about how people restrict freedom of speech and how much we see. How much freedom of speech restriction, how much censorship do we know about? Because the truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, if we had a march like this in response to every single time there was a freedom of speech violation by a government, then I'm telling you that we wouldn't be off. We'd be bloody living in the streets. We might as well be homeless. We wouldn't go to work. We wouldn't do any of this stuff. And France is certainly not one to be. Well, here's some cases. Here are some cases. Back in January of about a year ago today, comedian who again, these fucking names, Dwayne Donna Mbala. Now he's from what I can say, he's a Muslim comedian who makes jokes that are deemed to be anti-Semitic. If we took someone like Pamela Geller or Pat Condell or Geert Wilders or Robert Spencer, and if we changed what they said, let's take someone who does it under the guise of comedy, Pat Condell, who he had some things to say. I'll come to that in a bit. Now, I don't know whether this guy's French, and in the time I've had to prepare for this podcast, I found clips of him, but they're all fucking French. They're all in French. I can't find any subtitles. I don't know what this guy's content is. My point of the matter is, he's just a guy on stage speaking. Now, if people were sat there saying, now there are people who argue that some of the things, some of the drawings that were done by the Charlie Hebdo staff were in fact racially inflammatory. Now, that may very well be the case, but I don't give a shit. This is not. I don't have to just be. I'm defending people. This is a defence of people's rights here, right? And even if this guy is as anti-Semitic as they come, and even if Charlie Hebdo's drawings were as racist as they come, and just inflammatory, racially inflammatory and stereotypical in that sort of 1930s covetous Jew kind of way that the Germans did, I don't fucking care. Right? And I want to make this point, because I always get accused by people of, oh, you're an atheist and you're defending Islam. Well, I'm also an anti-racist, and I'm here defending people's right to be racist. Right? This guy was banned from performing in France. This is it. This guy was this is not a case of, this is the government. So this isn't like what we were talking about back in December when we were talking about I was talking about Dapper Laughs. This guy, he wasn't stopped by a government. Because this is what freedom of speech is, folks. Freedom of speech is simply you have the right to say what you want and the government can't stop you. When it comes to private businesses, when it comes to things like websites, when it comes to workplaces, businesses, private industry, that's a different case. That's their call. But the government permits you that. If the government here, a year ago, this January last year, banned this guy, Umbala, from performing. Back in 2009, in January again, 2009, a French cartoonist called Sine, S-I-N-E, he was on trial. He was a left-wing cartoonist, and he was on trial for charges of anti-Semitism, right, over a cartoon he drew. And guess what magazine that cartoon was for? It was for Charlie Hebdo. There was no marches then. There was no outrage then. I don't remember any people jumping up and down and go and I don't remember world leaders coming out and condemning this. I don't remember any government. You didn't see the government, all these government officials and all these people lined up. Yes, in 2009, Charlie Hebdo was censored, had their freedom of speech censored by the French government. By a guy who was it was something to do with the they made a cartoon suggesting that Jean Sarkozy, the son of the French president, was converting to Judaism for financial reasons. Now that is not a very clever joke, to be fair. But where's that one? Right? Did you know this one as well? Last year, the French government actually banned pro-Palestinian marches. Any marches or protests that were pro-Palestinian or were in any way targeted towards a sort of anything anti-Israeli were banned. Where's the march for that? Now all of these have got something in common. These marches, these bannings. No one got blown up. No one got killed. And I was bringing all these up. I've been talking about these for the last week on my Facebook. And you get people, I've had people who say, yeah, but at least they weren't killed. Well, what's this about then? Is this about people getting killed, or is this about freedom of speech? Or is this just about freedom of speech that results in death? Because here's the thing. Those terrorists, the reason those terrorists did what they did is because that's the only way they can get their message across. The government don't need to. They've got the monopoly of power. I don't want to start sounding like Stefan Molyneux here, but they've got the gun pointed at you. Now, if they pass a law or ban you from doing something, you then have to ask yourself the question, are you going to face the consequences of what happens? Because what are the consequences? The consequences are you're going to have guns pointed at you. You're going to be arrested. That's what's going to happen. So that's the first thing I would say about that is, just because there's no one killed, this kind of censorship happens all the fucking time. But when it's and we don't care when no one gets killed, and that's a dangerous thing. If we're not going to care, or we're just going to brush it under the carpet and go, well, it doesn't affect us, you have to ask yourself, what is the issue here? Now, moving on, One of these, I will say this as well, Pat Condell chimed in, and I'm just going to say this one. Pat Condell chimed in on Twitter by talking about, he started bringing in the idea that guns should be made more illegal. Like, he wants to bring in the sort of American system of guns. And so it's like, are guns bad? Is making guns bad? Well, it's easy to say that if you're not the person having the gun pointed at you. Well, let me say this. The last time someone who had Pat Condell's beliefs had a load of guns, 77 people ended up killed and a government building was blown up by a car bomb. That's what happened the last time someone like him had a gun. But there are other ways we respond. Now, you want to talk about doing the terrorist work for us. The terrorists of over the last few weeks, they share an ideological... They have ideological soulmates in this country, and they're called the right wing. It sounds... I know they always sound to be opposed, but the fact is they all want the same thing. The right wing, you want to call them the far right, and the terror, they all want the same thing. They want you to believe that all Muslims are bad, all Muslims are evil. And now the prime pillock has to be a guy who I'm sure you've seen this and heard this clip a million times, but I'm going to play it for you. It's a guy called Steve Emerson, who I've never heard of before, and who I'm never going to hear of again after this. This is his 15 minutes. He was on Fox News as a terrorism expert.
So, and in Britain, it's not just no-go zones. There are actual cities like Birmingham that are totally Muslim, where non-Muslims just simply don't go in. And parts of London, there are actually Muslim religious police that actually beat and actually wound seriously anyone who doesn't dress according to religious Muslim attire.
Now, that's all bollocks, what he just said there. He's since been on the BBC. Now, David Cameron... Now, this is what I hate most. This guy's made me agree with David Cameron. This guy came out, he says, Birmingham is a totally Muslim city. For the information of those who aren't sure, Birmingham, there are a lot of Muslims in Birmingham. It's one of the most heavily populated cities when it comes to Muslim. It's 20% Muslim. So that's 1 in 5 people. But David Cameron was asked about this guy, and this guy came out and said, well, he's obviously this man's a complete idiot. But David Cameron, and who I don't like to have to agree with, but David Cameron said it right. So if you go to Birmingham, it's a great city, and it is a nice city. I've been there, and he said it's a great city, and there's lots of different types of people who get on well, who work together everywhere. It's not, and the thing about Muslim police, I don't know where he got that from, but he was on the BBC. Now, he defended the point about Muslim police in London attacking people. The question he has been asked all this time, where did you get this information from? And he won't actually say. He says he won't. He said he got it from a source. He didn't fact check it. I don't know where he gets his expertise from. I don't even claim to be a fucking expert on this. But I'm going to tell you this. I know more than most about this issue. I've been banging my head against this the wall of this argument since. For 6 years now. I'm going to tell you where Steve Emerson got his information. Right? It's from his fucking arse. It's where he got it. He pulled it out of his fucking arse, and I know he pulled it out of his arse. And do you know how I know he pulled it out of his fucking arse? Right? Because I have trawled through and read and have gone through and have dealt with the most extreme, far-right, nationalistic, white supremacist, anti-Islamic, BNP, EDL, Geert Wilders, Pamela Geller, Atlas Shrugged fucking bullshit. I've had to trawl through. I mean, even Pamela Geller and Robert Spencer. These are people who deny the Serbian genocide. These are genocide deniers. Even Tommy Robinson and Kevin Carroll of the EDL, who men who have made up stories about children being raped by Muslim men in schools. Even they have never written anything close to saying there is anywhere in Britain that is a city so if I haven't seen it, as far as I'm concerned, if I haven't seen it, it doesn't. He made it up on the spot. So fuck him. Of course, we come then to the most common reaction that we all get, which is the reaction of the blaming of all the Muslims. Whenever a Muslim, what we've got here are 3 people We've got the two guys who did the shootings in the Charlie Hebdo offices, and we've got the guy who held up the kosher supermarket, and his missus, who I understand is still at large. I don't know if she's been caught yet. So what we've got here essentially are three people. We don't know about her role in it, if any. And the common reaction, as always, and the one that I dread having to go through, is well, what about the moderate Muslims? Where are the Muslims? Why aren't Muslims speaking out? Why aren't the Muslims speaking out? And this is where I might degenerate down to, right? Because there were two other Muslims who you need to know about involved in this incident last week. The first one is called Lassana Bathily. He is a Muslim originally from Mali in West Africa. He now lives in France. And when Amidi Coulibaly went in to the Jewish supermarket, Lassana Bathily saved the lives of 15 people. He saved the lives of 15 people by basically sneaking them downstairs of the supermarket into the freezer, right? He turned the freezer off, obviously, and there they were. He basically said, when they ran down, I opened the door to the freezer. There are several people who came to me. I turned off the light and I turned off the freezer. When I turned off the cold, I put the hostages in. I closed the door. I stayed calm. It took an hour and a half after. The actual siege was over for them to get the hostage out of the freezer, because as soon as the police came in, they arrested him. And I don't think we can have a go at the police for arresting the guy. I mean, let's be honest, under the circumstances, this isn't like a case of like, he was just arrested because he was black and a Muslim. This isn't one of those situations. I think the guy, it's understandable under the circumstances. So, and this guy did. Now, I don't know. This guy did what he did because, like most of us, he wants to do the right thing. Like most of us, he's not an extremist. He's not a terrorist. He's not an evil man. And he doesn't. And just because he shares, just because there is some link that can join him to another person, does not mean that he needs to bear responsibility. I mean, let's argue that without this man, 15 other people could potentially be dead. This man saved the lives of 15 people, right? And he risked his life doing it. And I don't know what, and just like, I'm sure the terrorists, when they do what they do and they say they do it in the name of Islam, I'm sure they believe it. I'm sure this guy did what he did. He will tell you he did it, right? And it's part of what represents his Islam. Does that make Islam good or bad? No. I'm going to sound a bit like Reza Aslan of this, but this is not. These people do what they do. This religion is merely it's sort of like a unfortunate link between the two. But one thing I find sickening is the fact that this poor bastard, after doing what he's done, will have to go out into the world, and we'll have people now. He's probably going to, because you're not going to recognise this guy if you see him. I wouldn't recognise him if I see him. But I'm sure when this guy gets on a bus next time, or when this guy walks into a supermarket next time, or when this guy walks into an airport, right, or a train station, I'm sure he's going to have people staring at him, looking at him, and feeling suspicious and scared of him, not realising that he is responsible for 15 people being alive today who would not have been. Is that right? Do you think, all you people out there who make your shitty little clickbait YouTube videos within 2 hours of the fucking event happening so you can cash in, fucking clickbait, I don't even like that word, it's a con, you're just an ambulance chasing fucking attorney, you're a scumbag, you're the lowest of the low, you are cashing in to get the traffic. If anyone out there has a YouTube channel and they upload a video about an incident, something like a terrorist attack or a major incident like this, that's obviously quite complicated and has a lot there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, as is this. As I think, you can at least, if nothing else, I hope I've shown you through this podcast today that this is not as simple as Je suis Charlie and freedom of speech for the win, because this runs deeper and more. This goes so much further than just the case of them coming over here, the brown, evil, foreign, Islamic terrorists, the ones with the funny voices and the funny names, right? It goes deeper than, it's much more complicated than that. One of the other Muslims who needs to be recognised and talked about in this incident is Ahmed Mubarak. Marabat. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. It's Merabet, Marabat. He was a police officer who, on film, you may have even seen the footage, I have too, it's quite distressing, I wouldn't recommend it, was shot. This is a Muslim police officer, shot, dead, and there was and to recognise that, his sacrifice. He was, and these terrorists who claim that they want to, that all Muslims should get to, did they think twice about it? No, they blew his fucking head off. We talk all the time about Muslims, these moderate Muslims need to speak out. Here you have a Muslim police officer standing in front of a terrorist with a gun. Do you need how much more does a man need to do? What more could he have done to make it explicitly clear to these people that he is not on their side, that he does not condone or support what they do in the name of a religion that he holds? Here's a man who was doing his job. He was defending a magazine. He was defending the rights of people who mock and ridicule his religion. His brother spoke at the rally, which he gave a eulogy. I'm going to read this eulogy. My brother was French, Algerian, and of the Muslim religion. He was very proud of the name Ahmed Marabat, proud to represent the French police and to defend the values of the Republic, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Through his determination, he had just received his judicial police diploma and was shortly due to leave for work in the fields. His colleagues describe him as a man of action who was passionate about his job. Ahmed, a man of commitment, had the will to take care of his mother and his relatives following the death of his father 20 years ago. A pillar of the family, his responsibilities did not prevent him from being a caring son, a teasing brother, a generous uncle, and a loving companion. Devastated by this barbaric attack, we associate ourselves with the pain of the families of all the other victims. I address myself now to all the racists, Islamophobes, and anti-Semites. One must not confuse extremists with Muslims. Madness has neither colour nor religion. I want to make another point. Stop painting everybody with the same brush. Stop burning mosques and synagogues. You are attacking people. It won't bring back our dead, and it won't appease our families. Is there anyone out there who can tell me one fucking thing wrong with that? Is there anyone out there who can give me one? Come on, where are you now? All of you fucking all of you anti-Islamic fucking Taliban, where are you? I want to know what you think of a man. Is he lying? Is he not a real Muslim? Was this Ahmed not a real Muslim? Or do you know what? If he wasn't good, I support the non-real Muslims, whatever the fuck that means. I am sick and tired of seeing people, particularly those like Dawkins and Condell and all of these fucking no-mark, no-nothings on YouTube. And I realise I'm a no-mark, no-nothing too, who jump up and down and go on about, and their first job is to point the finger at people, this guy's family. Do you think this guy's family are sat there now feeling, do you think they should feel responsible for their own, for Ahmed Marabat? Do you think he should have been, do you think before Ahmed Marabat had his fucking brains blown out onto the pavement with a gun by some extremist, insane nutter, do you think he should have sat there and thought, oh God, well this is my fault really? I've allowed this man's extreme. Do you think he should have thought that? Because I don't. I think this guy should be treated like an individual. And I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God, and I've never even come close to believing in God. I've been an atheist all my fucking life. I do not give a shit. However, if you are a theist, if you're an atheist, if you are agnostic, if you're a Muslim, a Jew, I've met the odd Scientologist, believe it or not. I even met a couple of creationists who I've got on very well with. Tolerance is not a bad thing, and I'm sick of people blaming people like this guy, and people like this guy who saved 15 people in the supermarket, and this policeman who got shot. These guys have to sit there and put up with the crap that comes out of the mouths of so-called fucking rational, logical, fucking free thinkers whose only fucking response every sodding, pissing time is to sit there and go, well, why don't the Muslims speak out? When are the moderate Muslims going to do something? Why don't you shut the fuck up, right? I don't know what planet you live on to have missed all of the fucking so-called moderates. Right, shortly after the attacks, the Islamic Society of Britain released this press statement. The terrorist attack in Paris is sickening and utterly wrong. It is an attack not just on the people of France, but on all of us here in Britain, on our fundamental and personal freedoms. Right? We believe that individual liberty is a light and a gift from God, a higher Islamic purpose for social justice and greater good. The act of terrorism in Paris today is a stark reminder of what we can take for granted and what is worth protecting and fighting for. That's the Islamic Society of Britain. I saw on the news I lost count of how many times I saw flags with a star and a crescent on them in that march. Right, people standing on the fountains, on all the pillars, on all the monuments. Right? And here's my hero of the week. Right, here's my personal hero of the week. Right, the mayor of Rotterdam. Right now, I've talked a lot about in the past about Geert Wilders. Geert Wilders, this fucking scumbag again, who cashes in on anti-Islamic, anti-Muslim fucking bigotry. And he is a guy who has sat there and told people he wants to kick out, he wants to ban Islam, he wants to ban the Quran, he wants to ban burqas, he wants Muslims to be banned from entering the fucking country, he wants to kick all the other Muslims, any Muslim who's immigrated over there out, right? And he's also basically explicitly said Moroccans, right? Well, here's one Moroccan in Amsterdam. His name is he's a Muslim. His name is Ahmed Abu Talibi. You can't get more Muslim than that. Ahmed Abu Talibi bin Laden, Taliban III, right? He is the mayor of Rotterdam. He was born in Morocco. This is a guy who Geert Wilders would have kicked out of the country, who has said he doesn't want any more of. He said publicly, right? He said in front of a live TV audience, and I'm not making this up, he said if these extremists don't like the way of life and the Western freedoms, pack your bags and fuck off. How much more could he have possibly said there? Right, what more do you want? That's the mayor of fucking Rotterdam. If your main response, if every time something like this happens, right, this was 3 people, and I know there's that thing of, well, not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists are Muslims. So all the ones you hear about are. Did you hear about the 40-year-old white guy who tried to blow up the Colorado division of the NAACP in an act of white supremacist terrorism this week? Probably not. It happened though. Right, the FBI are currently investigating it. The NAACP, which is obviously an organisation geared towards trying to, the advancement of coloured people, right, had an IED planted outside it by a 40-year-old white guy. Do I have to sit here as a 35-year-old white guy and fucking sit here and apologise for that cunt? And if your main response is for the actions of any terrorist is to sit there and blame, just to say it's all down to this religion and nothing else, there's no other factor. If you also want to hold all Muslims accountable like that cunt Rupert Murdoch has done more fucking damage to the fucking human race than fucking Islam could dream of, quite frankly. Right? If you want to sit there and demand that moderates speak out and that Muslims need to do something about the cancerous jihadist tumour that is but without actually saying what they should do, right? Let me tell you something. You're not a thoughtful individual. You're not an enlightened, rational skeptic. You're not a logical person. You don't get to sit there and call yourself a rationalist, because you are the intellectual lowest common denominator on the fucking food chain. You don't act. What you're doing, that reaction is not an reaction you do out of rational thought. It's one you do out of fear. It's knee-jerk. It's one you do instinctively because you don't know what else to do. Do you know why? That's fine. None of us know what to do. We can't do anything. Just like all the other Muslims in the world who you sit and blame, they can't do anything. Were there any Muslim terrorist attacks around in your country today if you lived in Europe? Probably not. Do you know why that is? It's because most of the Muslims around there didn't feel like doing anything, right? What more can anyone do against terrorism other than not commit a terrorist attack? And if you blame people and come out with that same standard, divisive, fucking extremist rhetoric, right? What you're doing is not of any value or worth. Right? You're not helping. You've never helped. You have only made things worse. You are doing the terrorist job. You are at best just a naive fool who's trying to speak for an idea above your station. At worst, you are a reactionary bigot who's trying to fucking cash in and gain some notoriety. And you're taking advantage of what is a very, very easy thing to manipulate and exploit. But if more peaceful Muslims just spoke out, then maybe shut the fuck up. Then what? What would happen if more peaceful? Do you honestly think that extremists give a flying fuck what anybody thinks? Least of all, moderate Muslims. Extremists don't think in terms of moderation. They don't see nuance. They don't see areas of grey. They see us versus them. Right? They don't give a shit what anybody thinks. To a fundamentalist Muslim, there is no difference between Ahmed Marabat and me. There is no difference to Osama bin Laden or to Abu Hamza, right, or to Anjem Chowdhury. There is no difference between myself, Fred Phelps, Reza Aslan, Bill Maher, Bill O'Reilly, Benjamin Netanyahu. We are all the same to them because we're not on their fucking side. If 99.9% of the world's Muslims as one all got together and stood up and in unison, right, said, and broadcast it live over every TV, radio and internet feed you could find, and they all as one said, we denounce and reject these terrorists who kill in the name of Islam. They do not represent us. We are peaceful people. Blah, blah. Do you think all the extremists would hear that and go, oh, okay, then we won't bother. Oh, I didn't realise. Is that what you think? Because it's bollocks. They just go, well, that's because you're not real Muslims, so guess you're going to have to die too. The extremists know they're in a minority, which is why when the right wing and when all of you fucking paranoid, anti-Islamic, Islamophobic, or just, shit scared, anti-theists or atheists, fucking, rational, free-thinking atheist fucktards, when you just speak out and start talking about Islam as just being Islam is not a religion of peace. No shit, Sherlock. There is no such thing as a religion of peace. No religion. Even if there was a religion that had one tenet, which was, bring about peace, there would be nutters who would manipulate it in order to say, well, we must kill everyone who's not peaceful. Then, do you know which group around the world is most likely to be killed from an attack from Islamic extremists? Muslims. Go and look at what happens in all the countries where these fuckers genuinely have taken over. Go look at countries like Somalia. Go look at what happened in Saudi Arabia. Is one of the most fucking extremist fundamentalist forms of Islam going over in that country, and it's the one that is mostly associated with terrorism, usually solely, which is Wahhabism. And they're allies of the United States, right? They're the allies of the United States, but the United States sell them fucking weapons. Why is this so hard for you to understand? You people who sit there and just try to make excuses so you can blame everyone. I understand that you need to blame someone and you need to feel like you can do something because you don't know when the next terrorist attack is coming, and neither do I. But I'm getting on with my fucking life the same, right? I'm a satirist too, just like the people at Charlie Hebdo. Right? There's no way on earth. I have received death threats. I've had death threats written down on paper and posted through my front fucking door from people who sympathise with the far right, because I had people posting my address, right, and my whereabouts online, and I had someone walk up, not write it down on a stamp, on a piece of paper. I had them put it through my fucking letterbox, and these people have the same fucking attitude to the, and reaction to this sort of stuff as all you people who claim to be enlightened rational thinkers. So do I get to blame you for any death threats I've received? No. It's not like that. And no matter how many times you sit there and cling on to this pie-in-the-sky fantasy, but if more Muslims spoke out, then maybe this would bullshit. It won't happen. It won't happen. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional here. I mean, I was watching the news all last week. I couldn't fucking move but for people speaking out. We've all been speaking out all week. That's all we can do. And all we can do is just hope that that the next time they get caught. And a lot of these guys do get caught. But what we should not do, is succumb to the fear and react in the way that gives the terrorists every single fucking bit of victory. Right? The victory, this terrorist attack, the 19 dead people, the attacks on Charlie Hebdo, these are not the victories. The victory comes in the form of dickheads like Steve Emerson, in the form of dickheads like Fox News and Geert Wilders and the English Defence League and UKIP and the Daily Mail, who sit there and they do the terrorist job for them, and you sit there and you let them fucking do it to you. And you could sit there, you could stop and listen to me, but I very much doubt you will. But I carry on shouting regardless, and I won't stop. I don't care how many of you put fucking death threats through my letterbox. I'm not shutting up. And I urge you not to either. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the podcast. I hope you have enjoyed it. Please download it. Please download this podcast. Share it around. And if you know someone who is of this persuasion, why don't we speak out? Send them this and tell them to shut up, sit down and listen. Stop being an idiot.